Hi, everybody. Welcome to our DAT IQ Weekly Market Update. This is our update for July 15. It's episode 347. I'm here with Chad Kennedy and also special guest today. Very exciting to have Micah Larsen from Truckers Against Trafficking. Mike, I heard you talking on Road Gang Radio about 3 weeks ago. I was very moved by it and promptly wrote to you to say, would you be on our show and just tell us about what you're doing? For those that don't know, give us a quick intro about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Dean said, my name's Micah Larsen. I'm with Truckers Against Trafficking. I'm TAT's mobile exhibit specialist. So I travel around to different parts of the United States and into Canada to bring a little bit more education and awareness surrounding human trafficking through our mobile exhibit, the Freedom Drivers Project.
It was one of the most moving segments I've ever heard, especially when you relayed the stories. Hopefully we'll get to those at the end of the show, just about what you've been able to achieve and some of the lives you've been able to save. I've had the opportunity to notice some pretty suspect things in my few million miles as an over-the-road truck driver, and they are ideally positioned. They are kind of your ears and eyes when it comes to this. They have a unique position in the industry, not just because they're everywhere, but because of the height of the vehicles looking down on everybody else. Micah, we'll bring you back in a little bit later. Chad, how's things in Florida?
Yeah, things are good. We're past the July 4th holiday. I was thinking this morning about how disappointing the first half of the year was for carriers and brokers, and shippers are enjoying that loose market. But let's get into the metrics here.
Yeah, the Florida citrus season has ended the lowest in a century, apparently.
Yeah.
So it's good news down there. For Florida growers. All right, let's dive into the market update. Some of the key things we're watching today or this week. Spot rates cooled last week after the post 7-4 week. Independence Day is kind of a surge in activity, but last week was really a catch-up week. It was the first 5-day shipping week, so there was a lot of activity following the week off that I think a lot of people had. Loads moved, spiked, especially in the Midwest. That pushed up the national average. But reefer volumes were down slightly, and rates dropped about 5 cents a mile post July 4. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But again, along seasonal lines, this is kind of the week where things start to cool off, or the dog days of summer, as we call it in the freight market. June imports up slightly in June from May. Trans-Pacific volumes are recovering following the start of the trade war. Volumes are down about 2.2% year over year. Imports from China have plunged, predictably. China volumes are down 22% year over year, and the lowest volume in 8 years for the month of June. Things like furniture down 30% year over year, toys down 34% year over year. That has significant implications for the truckload market in California, not to mention drayage carriers and transloaders on the West Coast. Diesel prices we're watching. The most recent ULSD ultra-low sulfur diesel movement, it's impacted primarily by geopolitical events. The Middle East crisis was the driver of rates going up about 29 cents a gallon, or about 8% in the last month. Assuming possible disruptions in the Middle East don't reoccur, and there's no certainty that the peace deal will hold, it's a regional critical to global energy supply. So we're hoping things stabilize there at the pump. But as we know, diesel prices are typically fast to go up and very slow to come back down. We're seeing a little bit of that now. Produce season ended typically around 7-4. Independence Day sees the peak in volumes. North America volumes about 6% lower year to date. We haven't got the final citrus numbers in, which will change some of these tonnage numbers. But California is really the story. Year to date volumes are about 26% lower. Things like lettuce and strawberry, which account for 48% of truckload volume each week, down 11% year to date. And Ariash's Intermodal Savings Index will be out on the Journal of Commerce soon, but it does show that the Intermodal Savings Index compared to truckload, contract shippers are saving about 25% compared to long-haul truckload. And on the spot market, intermodal shippers using the spot market are saving about 19%, suggesting that intermodal is maintaining a very strong position across both spot and contract markets. All right, this week's long-form version of the report with associated charts will be out this evening at dat.com/market update. Let's dive into the load-to-truck ratio for dry van. Load post volumes surged last week. Again, we're not reading too much into it. It was really a catch-up week. due to the Independence Day celebrations. The data will normalise next week, where we can get into some more meaningful year-over-year and week-over-week comps. Load-to-truck ratio up to about 7.71. In the refrigerated market, very similar to dry van, load-to-truck ratio was up slightly on a full volume of spot market shipments. Ended at about 14.81 by the look of it on the chart there. All right, in the flatbed, load post volumes increased last week, up substantially again because of the short week. Load to truck ratio up to 28.04. All right, having a look at our year-over-year look at spot rates. Dry van spot rates decreased about a penny per mile last week, reaching just over $1.69. That's about 3 cents a mile higher than last year. On our top 50 lanes, based on volume, carriers were paid an average of $2.03. That's about 34 cents a mile higher than the national average. And in our 13 key Midwest states, or bellwether states as we call them, rates were up by 5 cents a mile. A lot of activity across the Midwest. Volumes are up by 52%. But again, it was a catch-up week. Things will stabilize next week. Carriers in the Midwest state were paid an average of $1.97. That's 28 cents a mile higher than the national 7-day rolling average. Refrigerated rates down 5 cents a mile last week, just under $2. That's fairly normal for the post-July 4 week. The predictable loosening of available reefer capacity really begins the slide that we see all the way through to Labor Day with both dry van and refrigerated rates. Reefer rates are sitting about 2 cents a mile higher than where they were last year and almost identical to 2023. And lastly, for the second consecutive week, the national average 7-day rolling average for flatbed, excluding fuel, remained unchanged at just over $2.10 per mile. That's about 10 cents a mile higher than the same week last year. All right, let's quickly look at our short-term forecast before Chad comes back to talk about the contract market. This is our short-term forecast out 35 days. Ratecast is in green. It's giving us a view of what it thinks rates will be out to the middle of August. Of course, it more heavily weights longer-term seasonal trends. For those new to the show, the amber and red colours are really the higher and lower forward-looking error bands to give you a sense of where the forecast could go. Let's start with dry van. Ratecast is expecting rates mostly flat, but up about almost a penny per mile out to August 16 at $1.69. At that level, they'll be about 7 cents a mile higher than where they were this time last year. Low case down 6, high case up 8. I expect Ratecast to be pretty much on the money, although I do expect a little bit of optimism there, and the forecast might taper off towards the end of that mid-August forecast. We'll have to see how things go, given how soft demand is. Refrigerated rates, the reefer forecast is a little bit optimistic. I think both dry van and reefer have been buoyed by the surge in index activity last week around our market conditions. A lot of load post activity and fewer equipment posts. I think that might be influencing the 35-day here a little bit overly. We think that, or Ratecast thinks that rates will be up about 3 cents to $1 or to $2.03. By the time it gets to August 16, that'll be about 7 cents a mile higher than last year. I don't think that'll happen. I think the refrigerated market is going to cool off very quickly, as it always does. It typically loses about 10 cents a mile between now and Labor Day. I'm backing both dry van and reefer. I think the lowercase red line is going to be closer to where we land. And in flatbed, following a very typical seasonal downhill slide, Ratecast is expecting rates down 4 cents a mile to $2.05. That'll still be 11 cents a mile higher than where they were last year. And the low case has rates down 9, high case has rates fairly flat. But I think the green line there in Ratecast is going to be pretty accurate. Again, nothing unusual about rates sliding right through to the August-September timeframe. That's the spot market. Let's have a look now with Chad at what's happening in the contract market.
Thanks, Dean. As a reminder to our listeners, everything that I'll report on here is from a shipper perspective, so shipper buying from brokers and carriers, and that relationship between spot and contract, whereas what Dean just reported on was primarily broker to smaller carriers and spot. So the first graph we have here in yellow, the spot premium ratio, this measures the premium for spot rates compared to contract rates. Goes back to 2016. You can see the most recent metric there, or result there in this metric is as of 6/29, that full week of negative 9.4%. So spot rates still 9% below contract rates. And then the new rate differential there in blue is measuring the percentage difference between new contract rates and those rates they replace. So it really answers the question, what are shippers' contract RFPs yielding in the market right now? last week of June, first week of July came in at 1.9% positive, so inflation for shippers. And then the contract rate index, this gives you a sense of the market cycle and where we're at. You can see a slight tilt up and to the right, very slight. For June, so far, our results are coming in at 1.3% increase for shippers year over year for the month of June. That's primarily driven, as you can see there, by contract rates and that new rate differential, whereas only about 20% of the freight that shippers are buying are in that spot category from our large enterprise shippers. Now on to reefer. So we're at -7% on the spot premium ratio. So spot rates still depressed below contract rates. Pretty big jump there in the new rate differential at positive 2.4%, one of the highest readings we've seen in some time. And the contract rate index still pretty flat. Actually, looking at the rates in June, just below 0% into negative deflation, just below 0% for the month of June so far as data is coming in. And the last graph we have here, dry van at the top, reefer in the middle, and flatbed at the bottom. This is illustrating that relationship, spot in yellow, contract in blue, relationship between the two rates over time from a rate per mile perspective. That's a wrap on contract rates, Dean.
Yeah, Chad, before I bring Micah back in, reefer rates up towards the end of July, probably not a surprise to a lot of people in the spot market. How does that, is there a correlation between produce volumes surging towards the end of June, early July and contract rates, or is that just a coincidence?
It can create a little bit of routing guide leakage as the market tightens and pulls drivers into that space. But I don't think we've really seen much of that. And what we're hearing from shippers are routing guides are holding up. And so they're pretty happy with where they're sitting. We are about to see a second small wave of contract RFPs start to execute late July into August. This is kind of the second round, the first round being that March, April wave. So this will be another wave of new contract rates going into place where new routing guides will get set.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's good stuff. Thank you. Yep. Micah, let's bring you back in. Let's start with, a pretty easy question, but one that's I think is very important to set the stage. Can you kind of explain a little bit more about what Truckers Against Trafficking does and the sorts of things you do each day to advance the cause?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. Just for anybody who's unfamiliar, TAT, or Truckers Against Trafficking, is a 501c3 international nonprofit organization that is working to raise up and mobilize an army of transportation professionals whose primary goal is to aid law enforcement in the recognition and the reporting of the crime of human trafficking. So this, in essence, would help aid in the recovery of victims, but then also help put perpetrators behind bars. And we hope to aim to do that by providing all of our industry-specific training absolutely completely free of charge. And then as for what I do, like I mentioned, I'm the mobile exhibit specialist. So we have a mobile exhibit called the Freedom Drivers Project that travels around different parts of North America to bring more education and awareness on the realities of human trafficking, not just to our partners, but also to the general public as well. And on the inside of the trailer, we have actual artifacts from real survivors of human trafficking paired with some of their stories and other statistics on human trafficking, while also highlighting the work that we're doing with our partners and the work that they're doing in each of their sectors on their own as well.
You mentioned training. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on the training that the industry might want to undertake?
Absolutely. So we've got a general over-the-road training. We've got a local driver's training video. So you don't just have to be over the road. You could be a local driver. You could be an in-home delivery, a mover or something along that lines. We've got training that is relevant to all of those different fields. But then also TAP recognized the importance of the busing and the energy industries as well. And so we have training videos specific to those fronts. We do work with law enforcement all over the country. And in Canada as well. So we've got modules that are specific that are actually pretty brand new. They're only about a year old that any department across North America could easily implement to their system. We work with government officials and lawmakers in all 50 states. So we kind of have a wide berth of what we do. We started with trucking, but now really we work within so many different industries to help combat human trafficking on a day-to-day basis.
Micah, in that training, are there like a top 1 or 2 or 3 things that you can share with our audience that might be drivers out on the road that you would tell them to, the top tips, and how do they stay tuned into what specifics to look out for while they're out on the road?
Yeah, it's a great question. The training video itself is 27 minutes long, but when you take the training on our portal on our website, it gives you little quizzes and stuff like that to freshen your knowledge after watching some of those videos that we've got. I would say, there's a lot of red flags that are important to look out for. Does the person that you are thinking might be in a trafficking situation, are they too young to be out there by themselves, right? Are they heavily caked in makeup? Are they dressed appropriately for the weather? If it's really cold outside and they're not wearing that much clothing, that's often one of those red flags that we talk about. So there's a ton of different things that we discuss in that training. And then you also get to hear from actual survivors and their stories. And so you can kind of put those 2 and 2 together as they're telling their story. You can go through those red flags of exactly, what happened to them and say, okay, so that's something to pay attention to. Okay, so that's something to pay attention to, which provides really great perspective as you're looking to learn more about what to look out for.
That's great. 27 minutes. That's not long. I'll check that out today. I think most drivers should be able to tune in at some point.
Yeah, Micah, tell us about how big of a problem this is.
Yeah, really great question. I think a while ago, 15 plus years ago, somebody could say human trafficking, and they really just wouldn't have any idea what that means. But I think we as a society now are in such a good spot. We've done really great work to kind of know at least what that is at a base level, right? Which is that it's, human trafficking is modern day slavery. It's the exploitation of another human being through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for either the purposes of commercial sex or commercial labor, where one person, a trafficker or a victimizer, is in control and making a profit off of somebody else's back. I think that you have to look at the global scale of human trafficking. So whenever I do a presentation, I kind of go through some quick statistics. There are an estimated 50 million victims of modern day slavery around the globe every single year. And then if you look at human trafficking as an industry, it's a $256 billion industry every single year. So one of the things that I'll often hear when I discuss human trafficking with, at a presentation or at an event where I'm with the Freedom Drivers Project is, I just don't understand how somebody could do this to another human being. And I think your answer is really right there. 50 million victims, $236 billion. That's quite the gap, right? And that's not just because human trafficking is a crime of power, but it's also a crime of greed.
Yeah, the underside of humanity is tragic, isn't it, when you look at what's going on? And of course, with the media and social media in particular, we see a lot more of it these days. I'm kind of surprised we don't see more of it through social media, because everybody's got smartphones and taking videos in truck stops these days. I suspect the more we get this message out, the more that we'll be able to try and influence these numbers.
Yeah, and social media is it's hard because it's so vast, and relatively in the world, social media is still pretty new.
Right.
So human trafficking absolutely does happen through social media. I think it's just not talked about as much.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's important, for parents to monitor and take an interest in what your kids are doing and know exactly what apps they're on and who they're chatting with and who they're talking to,
Before we dive into a couple of stories that I heard you relay on Road Gang Radio, talk to me about the nominations that are open right now for the Harriet Tubman Award.
Yeah, so the TAT's Harriet Tubman Award is what we're currently promoting up until the end of July. That's when the nomination window is closing. But the Harriet Tubman Award is a prestigious honor that we give out annually. The award includes a $5,000 check, and it honors different members of the trucking, bus, and energy industries whose actions have helped recover or improve the lives of victims or prevent human trafficking or sexual exploitation from taking place. So one of the things that, again, when I talk about human trafficking with people, I think one of the fair questions that I often get is how can we tell that this is working? You know, how many people have been saved? How do I know as just somebody in society that anti-human trafficking training is working? And I think that's a really fair question, because human trafficking is a very complex crime. And so I think it's really kind of hard to track that data and give a straightforward answer to. But awards like the Harriet Tubman Award are really a constant example that we're able to provide that the work that we do does in fact have a lasting impact on people and helps actually save lives.
Yeah.
And the proof is in our ability to be able to tell these stories that we thoroughly vet through our presentations and on our website. Just with those stories. So again, it's an award that we give to somebody, a member of the trucking, bus, or energy industry who has made a call that has had something happen to a victim of human trafficking as a result of that call.
Yeah, we covered the last year or this year's award with Charles Burnson from TA. I think he's in South Carolina. We wrote about it last week in our market update. If anybody's interested, you can go to DAT.com and look up that blog post. That's fascinating stuff. I really want to get to the stories, right? Because I found those to be particularly moving. What can you share with us that might give us a bit more of an insight?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to let the listener go and see the video that we made on Charles and Nikki's story, because it's a phenomenal story. They all are, but that's, as you mentioned, our most recent Harriet Tubman Award. And every time I see that video, I get emotional because it's really powerful stuff. But I do have two stories that I can share with you of past winners. The first story is about two perpetrators named Laura Sorensen and Aldair Hadza. And in January of 2015, Sorensen and Hadza pulled their RV into a Virginia truck stop where police were very quickly called to the scene. And when troopers when they asked to enter the vehicle, they kind of immediately knew that something was wrong. And that's because both Sorensen and Hadza were very giddy with law enforcement. They were over answering their questions, offering the officers cookies, and even insisting that they sit down and relax, which is definitely not normal behavior for somebody who's being investigated by the police, right?
Exactly.
There's a third person in the RV at the time, and she wasn't talking. Her hair was pulled up into a greasy bun on the top of her head. She was very pale, heavily made up with makeup. And most importantly, she kept her eyes down and she wouldn't look at anybody. So that's kind of some of those red flags that I was talking about earlier, right? You can see all of those right there with this individual. So at one point during the conversation, Sorensen and Hadza actually pointed out the front window of their RV to a local landmark that they were telling police that they were wanting to visit later that day. So it was at that point that the young woman was able to look up as everybody's attention was focused out the window and make a face to the officer nearest her and signal that she in fact did need help and that she was not okay. That's when that trooper removed her from the RV, and when she got outside, that's when she began to tell her horrific story. She was a 20-year-old woman who had been kidnapped from her Iowa home weeks prior. And I say kidnapped, but I do think it's also important to mention that she did know these people, as I think kidnapping is commonly misassociated with human trafficking. These people were friends of her sisters. So she had been beaten, raped, and her entire body had been completely burned with instruments that were heated up on the RV stove. She had been branded and tortured, and then at one point she had actually managed to escape until Sorensen and Hadza were able to track her down, and then they jammed nails into her feet so that she wouldn't be able to run away again. Really horrific. They were selling her through Craigslist ads that they were posting of her online, and then that's when men were coming out to the RV and raping her. She had not eaten in a week. She had told officers she could not remember the last time that she had had anything to drink, and she told the officer that at this point she felt as though she were going to die if she were supposed to continue on like this. And doctors actually said that if that call to law enforcement had not been made that day, that she would have died from the malnutrition and the torture that she had suffered. One of the reasons that we tell that story in particular is because that's an accurate depiction of what human trafficking looks like in our country. And I think that it's one thing to talk about human trafficking, but then when you hear the details about some of those stories, you truly realize how horrific it can actually be.
Mm.
The driver who was there that day his name was Kevin Kimmel. And he saw a young woman's head poke out of the back of that RV from a curtain, and then saw her head snapped back pretty quickly, and the curtains were closed. And that didn't really sit right with him. And he had human trafficking training before. And so as he was thinking about it, he said, you know what, I think I should just make a call just in case. And that's when police got there, and she was able to make a full recovery and is now at home with her family, getting the love and care that she needs. And she actually called him from her hospital room and told Kevin, you know, you're my guardian angel. And he basically just said, no, ma'am, I'm just a trucker against trafficking. You know,
Right.
it's a really powerful story about what one phone call can do for somebody. And I think one of the things that I always talk about in presentations and stuff is there's this mentality and culture for a really long time to just mind your own business. But we want to shift that into don't mind your own business, you know, focus on what's happening around you, pay attention to the people that are around you, and you never know what you might see and who you might be able to help by making one simple phone call. Right. And then the second story that I have for you is our 2023 Harriet Tubman Award winner. And his name is Joe Aguayo. He's a professional truck driver with Winco Foods. And in September of 2022, Joe was driving in a remote area of the country known for its hot springs, but also its lack of cell phone service. And as he was rounding the curve in the mountains, he saw something that he knew was wrong right away. It was a young woman whose head was completely shaved. She was looking up at the mountains as if she had no idea where she was. And the only thing that she was wearing was a beach towel. So while obeying an explicit company policy prohibiting unapproved riders in the cab, he continued driving for a couple of minutes until he saw the very next roadside police call box. And once he did, he pulled over, he called law enforcement, he gave her description, the location that he was at, the time that it was, and then he went on his way. And then a couple months later, Joe was actually driving the same route again, and he ended up having a weather-related accident in the same area. And as he was conversing with law enforcement on the scene as they were helping him, he thought, you know, I should actually inquire about that phone call that I made a couple of months ago. So he asked the officer that was assisting him if he had known what had happened to the woman that he had called about a few months prior. And to Joe's surprise, the trooper that was assisting him in the accident was also the very same trooper that had assisted him with his phone call about the woman. And the trooper was amazed to be reunited with the person who had placed the call for, help. It turns out that the young woman was a 27-year-old victim of human trafficking who had been drugged and then just dumped in that area. She was apparently in really rough shape, and the trooper was able to transport her to the hospital where she was able to make a full recovery. The trooper did tell Joe that day that he had likely saved the woman's life because had he waited until his own cell phone had service again and not used the roadside call box, her story probably would have likely ended differently. Because they were able to get there pretty quickly after he was able to call. So it was because of those actions that we were proud to name Joe our 2023 Harriet Tubman Award winner.
Just staggering. The roadside call boxes, that's very interesting. You know, I'd never thought about it, yet I've driven past them hundreds of times.
Right.
I often wondered what they were for, but clearly there's a great example.
Yeah, totally. Just one of the many uses for them, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I found when I heard some of those stories and watched the video, I was kind of moved by it because I thought this is sort of something, especially Nikki's video, like that was, and we need to get the link out here. We'll get the link out somewhere in the show, but just the downside or the tough part. Trucking's a hard job as it is.
Yes.
And truckers aren't always, fully alert because you're in a truck stop, you're tired, you're frustrated. But I love that these two drivers have both had the foresight to notice something because the first story is kind of a chance, split second view.
Yeah.
And had it not been for that. Yeah. What else can you tell us about how people can get involved? What do they do from here?
Yeah, so I would say our not only is our website does it have our training and all the links to those opportunities, but it's also just a really fabulous resource, and it does give a very in-depth look at all of the different sectors that we work in. We also, I mentioned that we work within busing. So that's motor coach, transit. But then we also have a specific a video for school bus drivers. So parents, if you've got kids that go to school and they either take the bus, or let's say they don't have access to a bus and they take public transportation to school, we've got resources for all of those different scenarios on our website that you can take a look at just as a parent, to be able to not only educate yourself, but then also potentially also educate your school systems and how to pay attention to this kind of thing. So yeah, our website is www.tatnonprofit.org. And it's just, again, it's a really fabulous resource. When I got first hired, I did not know. I had read a couple books about human trafficking, and that's where I was like, okay, I really now am kind of invested in really wanting to get this job, and because I didn't realize how big of an issue it was. But then I just scanned our website for like an entire week and was learning so many different things about statistics surrounding human trafficking and all the work that TAT does and all of its different sectors. And then I was able to actually attend a law enforcement training in person. So yeah, I think that's the first step, is go check it out, see what you can learn. And then take the training from there. It's super easy to take our training. You just put your name in, you put your email in, and you can sign up to take literally any of our courses. And as I said, there are quizzes and stuff like that they give you while you're watching the videos. It's just a really phenomenal resource.
Yeah.
Micah, I know all that's not free. How are you guys funded, and can people donate on the site?
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. It's free for the general public. So we are completely funded by corporate sponsors. Okay. So all of these different companies, have seen the work that we've done over the last 15 years and have decided, that's really important stuff. We're going to take that extra step and become a corporate sponsor. And we really could not do the work that we do without them. And that's part of what I do with the mobile exhibit, is that any diamond and above corporate sponsors, they get an event with the FDP every single year. And so that's why my boss and I were kind of on the road. We split time there doing different corporate sponsored events for folks. Like this week, I'm going to be in Detroit to attend an event for Lindy and their FDP event for this year. Okay. So
that's the cryogenic gas company.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Where else can we see you the rest of the year?
Yeah, we're going to be a lot of different places. We're going to be at ATA's Nationals this year, as well as ATA's management, the MCNE, which will be in San Diego in October. But yeah, and then the IONA Expo in Long Beach, California in September will be there as well. And anybody who wants to see exactly where the FTP specifically is going to be, can go to our website, go to the Freedom Drivers Project landing page, and you can actually see a map of North America with all of the different events that we'll be attending with a little truck icon. Cool. It's a pretty cool resource. And then, you asked me kind of how else can people get involved? We also have a free app too, on the App Store, whether that's the Apple Store or the Google Store. Android, not Google. Right. And it's also a really great resource. They provide you hotline information and local law enforcement phone numbers for if there's a situation you think is involving human trafficking, as well as a lot of those red flags that we talked about. If you're in a situation where you're like, gosh, I need to know some of these red flags right now, but I can't think of them off the top of my head, our app is a really great resource to go in and just quick scan some of those. We have a lot of physical training materials, and one of them being a wallet card, but I like to say that our app is like the virtual version of our wallet card. So you can check out our app as well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
we'll do all of that. We'll push it out on our social channels. I'll do the same on my personal channels. I think this is very important to get this information out. Micah, thanks for being on the show. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I thank you for what you guys do. Truck drivers are, if you've seen, smelled, tasted, touched anything, it came in on a truck at one point. And so the country and the world really would not be able to run without you guys. So thanks for what you do.
Here. A couple of shout outs. Don't forget Radio Nemo's grand opening is next week in New Orleans. I'll be there doing the show live on the Thursday the 24th. So 7:23, I think it's about 6 p.m. local. Road Gang Radio is having the official opening. Chris Caplis on the Freightbind podcast is talking to Matt Manor from Uber Freight. Catch that podcast. It's a really good listen. Next week, we've got Jack Samuelson from Raw Logistics in Buffalo. Don't forget, Operation Brake Safety Week is August 24 to 30. Make sure you set up alerts for our live show and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And with that, another show's in the books. Thanks for watching. Be safe. Be nice to everybody in particular. We'll see you back here next week at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific.